Bem-vindas todas e todos. Welcome everyone. This video was recorded in English and it will have subtitles in Portuguese. Esse vídeo, gente, foi gravado em inglês, mas ele tem legendas em português que podem ser ativadas nas configurações do vídeo. Então, assim a gente se entende melhor, tá bem? Deem uma olhadinha aí nas configurações para que todos vocês possam ativar a legenda se desejarem. So, I am Gabriela Tebet, professor at UNICAMP, Faculty of Education, and it's a pleasure to have Rhaisa Pael here with us today.
Hello, everybody. So I'm Rhaisa. Nice to meet you all. It's a pleasure for me to be here too.
Nice.
Thank you, Gabriela.
Rhaisa is assistant collaborating researcher in the graduate program in education at the University of Brasília, and will interview with me the professor Marianne Undheim, who is associate professor at the Department of Early Childhood Education of Faculty of Arts and Education in the University of Stavanger, Norway. Hi, Marianne.
Hi, happy to be here. Thanks for asking me.
It's a pleasure for us to have you here today and to have our dear audience with us once again. Today, we are going to get to know a little about Norwegan children's education and the research of Professor Marianne, and I wish you enjoy the talk. So Marianne, please tell us about early childhood education and care in Norway. We are very interested in know more about how is early childhood education and care organized in your country. What are the bases and conceptions of early childhood education for kids from 0 to 3 and 3 to 6 years old? So it's amazing to have you here with us today.
Thank you. Yeah, in this presentation, I'll focus on children's participation and early childhood education in Norway. And my name is Marianne Undheim, and I work at the University of Stavanger. And then I'll also talk a little bit about my PhD research, where I've focused on children's and teachers' collaborative, creative use of digital technology in early education and care institutions. And before I started on my PhD, I worked for more than 20 years as an early childhood teacher education in Norway. In this presentation, I will focus on 4 aspects, with children's participation as a red thread through all 4 parts. Early childhood education in Norway, the Norwegian early childhood education curriculum, and then some about early childhood education in Norway during the coronavirus pandemic. And then at the end, young children and teachers creating digital stories in early childhood education and care, which is from my PhD. So early childhood education in Norway. And as you can see on this map, Norway is a country way up north where you can see the blue dot. So it's quite far away from Brazil. First, some facts about Norway. The population is about 5.3 million. As of November 2020. So we have a quite small population. The area is not that big either, but we have a very long country with a long coastline with beaches, narrow fjords and mountains. And we have 4 major cities in Norway. Oslo, the capital, with a population of almost 700,000 people. And then Bergen, Trondheim and Stavanger. And Stavanger is close to where I live. And that's where the blue dot on this map. And the government in Norway is a unitary parliament, and it's a constitutional monarchy. So first, an historical view of early childhood education in Norway, because today this draws on 2 different traditions. On the one side, we have the German philosopher Friedrich Fröbel, who opened the first kindergarten and created the concept of kindergarten, meaning children's garden, back in 1840. Fröbel had a child-centered and progressive view of children and education, and he focused on the practical creativity, activity, and play for the youngest children. He focused on the free-minded and interacting child, and he highlighted the need for kindergarten teachers to interact in a dialogue with the children within different themes and activities. It had a pedagogical focus. And then on the other side in Norway, we had the children's asylums. They were focusing on children's well-being and child care and can be dated back to the beginning of the 1800s. They had a social focus. And today, Norwegian kindergartens are based on these two traditions. And in 1975, when Norway got its first Kindergarten Act, these different childcare institutions were integrated as one institution, which is called kindergarten. So today, Norwegian kindergartens are voluntary pedagogical institutions for children aged 0 to 6 years old and seen as an important part of the education system. Kindergartens are based on socio-cultural perspectives and characterized by a child-centered pedagogy. And children in Norway start in compulsory school at the age of 6. And as you can see in this table, in 2020, 92%, almost 93% of all children aged 1 to 5 years old attended kindergarten, according to Statistics Norway. The staff-child ratio in Norway is, we split between the oldest children and the youngest children. So with the youngest children, there are 3 children per adult. And with the a little bit older children, we have 6 children per adult. And then working with the children, we have 1 teacher, and then we have 2 co-educators. And the group sizes differ also based on the age group of the children. So with the youngest children, there are usually 9 to 12 children in a group. And then with the older children, it's usually 18 to 24 children per group. And teachers in Norway has a bachelor degree, 3-year. And the opening hours, they differ, but usually it is from around 7 a.m. in the morning until 4:30, 5 o'clock or something like that in the afternoon. And the ownership of the kindergartens, we have it's split between a municipality and private owned. But we have the same regulations, they apply to them both. And the municipalities are responsible for the development of and the supervision of both the private and the municipality-owned institution, and to ensure that the institutions are run according to the Framework Plan and the Kindergarten Act. The core values in Norwegian kindergartens are the intrinsic value of childhood and a holistic approach to children's development. And the holistic understanding of education, giving well-being and socio-emotional development a special place, is highlighted in OECD's policy review of early childhood education in Norway. And well-being and children's development are central. Active participation in society is highly recognized as well, and democracy are core values in Norwegian kindergartens. And these core values can also be seen in terms of the 21st century competences. The idea of 21st century competences is a central term related to key competences and core aspects in contemporary cultures and international frameworks, such as collaboration, communication, ICT literacy, social and cultural competences, including citizenship, as well as creativity, critical thinking, and problem solving. These are examples. And none of these 21st century competences are new. However, due to a rapid changing society and the technological impact on society, they are regarded as important future competences. And in early childhood education and care, a future perspective focusing on school and society is often seen in contrast to a child-centered here and now perspective. However, these perspectives, on the one side the here and now, and on the other side the future, can be combined through the perspectives of lifelong learning. And further, I also consider the 21st century competences to be important here and now experiences for the children, embedded in their everyday experiences, both at home and in the kindergarten, as well as also to be important in the context of a future perspective. Democracy is another important aspect of the everyday life in Norwegian kindergartens. The group and the social community where the individuals communicate, collaborate, and participate are essential. And by participating in the kindergarten community, the children shall be able to develop an understanding of society and the world which they live in. And in this case, also the different opinions and perspectives are also highlighted in the framework plan, because they are seen as a help to develop the kindergarten as a democratic community. Children must also be given possibilities to negotiate, to justify, and to prioritize between different views, to formulate questions, listen to others, reflect, and find answers. However, research has shown that even when teachers ask children about their opinions, children's views very often were restricted by the teacher's control and power. So even though Norwegian kindergartens are regulated by law and a common framework plan, there are big variations and differences among the kindergartens. And then a little bit about the Norwegian Early Childhood Education curriculum. Children's voice is important. And the importance of integrating children's voice and children's participation is a key aspect of Norwegian kindergartens. Children's right to participate, as constituted in the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, is integrated in the Norwegian Kindergarten Act and the Framework Plan. And according to Biesta, participation is about bringing children's thoughts and initiatives into the world and give them a voice. It is important to give the children a chance to exist as subjects, to experience that they are unique and that their meanings are important. And this can be done through storytelling and digital stories. And storytelling is a common activity in Norwegian kindergartens, and it is seen as an important way for children to communicate. According to the framework plan, the children are to be presented for different stories and cultural expressions within the kindergarten activities, but the children must also be given possibilities to create their own stories and express themselves in several ways, including digitally. And the framework plan describes digital practices as working methods with an emphasis on children's creative exploration. So the Norwegian Framework Plan emphasizes how staff can support and promote children's development and learning through everyday activities and group experiences, through a holistic approach where care, formative development, play, learning, social skill, communication, and language processes shall be seen in context, and together they shall contribute to the children's all-round development according to the framework plan. And the children's interests and previous experiences are understood as a foundation for planned activities and new experiences. For example, when integrating children's play and everyday activities into the various learning areas. But learning in Norwegian kindergarten is seen as something that happens in everyday situations through communication and interaction. No specific learning goals for the children are included in this framework plan, and the plan does not use the word teach nor educate. Still, we have some learning areas in the kindergarten, and these are themes that reflect topics of interest and intrinsic value to children of kindergarten age. and these shall help promote well-being, all-around development, and good health. And these are listed on the right side: communication, language and text, body movement, food and health, and so on. So the kindergartens shall view the learning areas in context, and all learning areas shall be recurring themes in the kindergarten content. And in Sami kindergartens, the learning areas shall be based on the Sami culture, language and traditions. And the Sami people are indigenous people in Norway, Sweden and Finland. So the kindergarten theme should be based on the area where you live and the culture, which is different from different parts of Norway. The core values and objectives of kindergarten shall set the agenda for and influence the learning areas, and the children's right to participate shall be observed. Play is an important building block in the different learning areas. Further, it is highlighted that kindergartens shall build on children's enthusiasm and contributions so that the learning areas can be seen as meaningful and fun part of the kindergarten life. The children's interest in the learning areas shall be stimulated, and kindergarten shall help create a learning community that values different expressions and opinions. The children shall develop knowledge and skill within all learning areas through curiosity, exploration, and creative activity. Further, kindergarten shall use a range of materials and equipment, technologies, digital tools, games, books, and so on in their work within the different learning areas. And these learning areas are substantially the same as the subject that the children will meet in school later.
Okay, thank you, Marianne.
Thank you so much, Marianne. So as you were talking, I was writing down some notes. And first of all, I can see that Brazil's public policies are going towards the same as Norwegian ones. When you put that children's participation is a core in your framework, that's where we are trying to go to as a national curriculum as well. So I'm kind of relieved that we are both talking about the same topics. But there are 2 points that I would like to compare and contrast with you that really caught my attention. So first of all, in Brazil, we in talking about how we train teachers to be early childhood teachers. So in Brazil, that's a complaint that we have only a few subjects during their pedagogy course that will talk about early childhood. And then when we met in Australia at QUT, we are located at a whole department on early childhood education. So that was really amazing for me because that's not a reality in Brazil. So we have just a few professors talking about on this subject. And then I want to know, how does it work in Norway? Do you have a whole department on early childhood? Do you have a lot of colleagues that work with young children or not? Please tell me.
Yes, we are lucky to have a whole department. In Norway, it's organized. We have early childhood teacher education, and that's where the teachers who will be working in kindergartens will go to the university. And that's a special course for teachers who will be working for their youngest children. And then if you want to be a teacher in school, you have to go to a different teacher training course at a different department within the university. So I think we are about 60 colleagues working, I'm not sure, but about 60 colleagues working within the Department of Early Childhood Education at Stavanger University.
So that's amazing.
Yeah, it's similar
so
as
amazing.
in Australia.
So amazing. Yes, it's very hard for us, the amount of disciplines to teach about early childhood education in pedagogy course here in Brazil. It's amazing to listen to you to talk about how it is in Norway. And
And what I was
excuse
thinking
me.
about things, because us teachers working, some are teaching in pedagogy, some are teaching in different subjects. So I was talking about the learning areas within the kindergarten, but we have similar knowledge areas where we train the pre-service or the students at the university. So some of the teachers will have specialization within the Norwegian language, mathematics development, different science and stuff. And then I am within the pedagogy part of the department.
Very nice. And I am very interested in understand better when you talk about different curriculum for different cultures and different areas, because here in Brazil we recently have a national discussion about the importance of a national guidelines for early childhood education, and it's not consensus among the scholars and the professionals. And when you talk about these different curriculums, different strategies for different areas and cultures, I think it's very, very interesting. And I want to listen you to talk a little bit more about if don't you think this kind of organization can promote any kind of inequality? Because this was some argues we listen here in Brazil, and I want to better understand how it works in your country.
Yeah, I'll try. We have one curriculum for all kindergartens in Norway. So we have just one curriculum, but within that curriculum, we have a lot of freedom. And within those learning areas, such as local community and society, which is one of the learning area, we have to kind of adjust to where we live. So the local culture will be important for the children to learn about, but they also have to learn about Norway as a whole. So it will it kind of depends. But then we have the indigenous people in Norway, the Sami people, and they have a specific curriculum for them to promote that culture and to make sure we don't lose it.
Very, very interesting, Marianne. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so that was about my second point to make with you, Marianne, talking about the curriculum. So as Gabriela said, in 2017, we established a national curriculum for Brazil, for early childhood in Brazil. But I'm trying to understand the process, how you did your process in Norway and how we did it here. So back in 2015, 14, we had these national seminars that state from state would organize to discuss the national curriculum. So teachers would be involved, at least the government was trying to get everybody to participate and giving them opinions on what they thought it was best. But at some point, we had this process, let's say, this teachers' participation, this popular participation is stopped by the government. And then from that point on, they took care of it and finished up the national curriculum as it wanted, without asking us anything else. So what I want to know is how was the Norwegian curriculum built? Did you have teachers participating on this? It was just the government. Do you remember how they worked back there?
It was done something similar as to what you describe. We got the first curriculum in 1995, I think it was 1995, 1996. I don't know how it was made back then, but then it was the version we have now is a revised version and came in 2017. And we've had a couple of revisions in between as well. And for this latest revision, a lot of people, both early childhood teachers, kindergarten teachers, but also people working at the university and within different organizations regarding early childhood, have been within the process. So there has been a long process with a lot of discussions and stuff, but of course at the end somebody has to make the decision of what to do. So yeah, some agree and some don't agree. So, and that's how it is, I guess.
Marianne, I have two more questions for you. You told us about the private and municipal institutions in Norway, and I want to know how it works, the municipal institutions. It's free of charge for every children, how it works. And the other question was sent us by my colleague, Professor Maria Aparecida Monção, from my research group and department. And she asked about transitions from family to school and the reception of new children in daycares and kindergartens, and about relations of early childhood education and cares and children's family. She wants to know what sort of arrangements are made by early childhood educations in case of babies and young children going for the first time to these institutions. Do you know how is the acclimation done for younger and older children starting in these institutions?
There are big differences. I'll start with the transitions because that was the latest question. Usually parents stay at least 3 days within the kindergartens, together with the children when new children start in kindergarten. That's when they're young and when they're a little bit older. But more and more kindergartens are widening that period up until maybe 2 weeks. So in some kindergartens, the parents are actually spending a couple of weeks together with the children, especially with the youngest children, 1 and 2 years old, so that they make the transition gradually, so that the children will be related to the people in the kindergarten, and usually you focus on one of the teachers and one of the educators who will have a special responsibility for some of the children. And then when the parents will stay there with the children, and then gradually the children will stay in the kindergarten for a longer and longer period by themselves, and the parents move away and then come back. And yeah, so it's a dialogue between the kindergarten teacher and the parents how to best do it.
Very nice.
And then with the private and the municipality owned, kindergartens in Norway are not for free. There might be some you can apply for some social help and get it cheaper, but I think everybody has to pay, and it's about the same amount both in the municipality owned and the private owned. So there aren't really those big differences between the different kindergartens in terms of ownership.
Okay, it's very different from Brazil, because here the main difference among private and municipals is the fact of the municipals are free of charge. And I asked this for you because it was for me very shocking when I was to my first international conference and visit some kindergartens, and I was in my first international conference in France, if I'm not wrong, in Sweden. And Sweden, no. Onde que foi, Rhaisa? Você lembra? Era Genebra, Switzerland.
It says Switzerland. Geneva is Switzerland.
Yes. So I went to Switzerland in the conference and visit some daycares. And when I discovered the municipals are not free, it was a shock for me. And now I always ask, because it's not the same in Brazil. So it's interesting to know. Thank you, Marianne.
Yeah, so those are already 2 points that are really different from early childhood education in Brazil. You have a specific training course to teachers, and second, you pay for it. So in Brazil, we don't have the training, and it's free. It's free for children. So I can see some why we are so different. When I saw the pictures, from other early childhood institutions abroad Brazil, then I can understand. Yeah. So thank you very much, Marianne. So let's talk about early childhood during COVID. How did it work?
Yeah, how did we do with early childhood education and care during the coronavirus pandemic? And of course, now it's lasted for over a year. So yeah, what have we done? The corona pandemic hit Norway in March last year, so it's about a year ago. And on March 12th in 2020, everything closed. We were encouraged to mostly stay at home. We had home offices and we had homeschooling. But even though the kindergartens and the schools were closed, some children were still allowed in kindergarten school. And that was vulnerable children, children with special needs, and children with parents in important jobs, such as doctors and healthcare personnel. And when most things were closed during this first lockdown, we saw that the number of infected cases gradually decreased the following weeks. So then they also saw that the youngest children profit the least from home or distance schooling, and it was difficult with home offices and homeschooling and childcare, especially with the youngest children. And at that time, we also had little spread among the young children. So then in April, they were gradually reopening society. Kindergartens opened first, and then a week later, primary schools, and then secondary and high schools, and then finally the university. But they opened right before we went on summer holidays, so we didn't. We only had digital classes last spring. So when they were gradually reopening the society, the most important concern was to provide safety, and that was the most central concern from the government. And I also have a link to the Norwegian Education Minister who is talking on BBC News. So in Norway, we have 3 main society rules, and we've had those the last year. Stay at home if you feel ill, good hygiene and extra cleaning, and social distancing measures. And the social distancing measures is regarding the number of people that we are allowed to stay together, inside and outside, private and public. And these measures has changed many, many times since March 12th last year. We are also encouraged to stay 1 to 2 meter distance from other people. But of course, in kindergartens, it is not possible to keep social distancing. So there they have fixed that by dividing the children into smaller groups, cohorts, to prevent the virus from spreading. And they have had less cooperation between these different groups, and they've had increased hygiene and cleaning measures. They've spent much time outdoors, and staff has received training in infection control. And the government has created posters where these things are listed. And so when the kindergartens and schools opened again, they were organized based on the traffic light model. And that was to be able to adapt the infection control measures according to the local situation with regard to both infection and outbreak management. So the measures are divided into different levels: green, yellow, and red. And at the moment, I live in a green area, while other parts of Norway are very, very red. So on the green level, it's kind of a normal organization of the kindergarten days and play, and most things are open. And then on a yellow level, children are divided into more fixed groups, cohorts with designated staff and limited contact between the cohorts to prevent the spread. And then in the red level, it's very fixed with the groups, just very small groups, and staff are allowed to stay together, and there are a lot of distance between the cohorts. And some places, they have even had to close down some kindergartens and schools. And I'll also share the link to the present English version of the COVID-19 Guide to Infection Control for Kindergartens in Norway. And here you can see what kind of measures the kindergartens have to be aware of at the different levels.
Very nice, Marianne. We will put this link in the description of this video, so our audience can find it easily. Thank you.
Yeah, that's it about the COVID-19.
So did you have a lot of discussion, like public discussions about how the early childhoods would function during COVID, Marianne?
Yes. We've had a lot of public discussions a year ago and also again today. Should it be closed? Should it not be closed? Should it be on yellow level? Should it be red level? How do we do it? And at the moment, we see much more spread also among the young children in certain parts of Norway. And so they actually had to close down some places.
All right.
So it's not easy.
Yeah, so that was my question. How about yourself? How do you feel about these closings and the young children, and what's your opinion?
It's hard to know what's the best thing, because for some children it's better to be able to stay in the kindergarten and meet their friends and stuff, but then you have the virus and you don't really know where it is because you can't see it. It's not easy, and it's not good to know what is the best. What they have tried to do is to kind of put the use the red level and put people into smaller cohorts, so that they don't have to close down, because they kind of feel that to close down is a more drastic step. But some places they have had to do that, at least for some parts, for a shorter period.
Yeah, sure. But and can you see bad consequence for children because of the pandemic? Do you have any studies talking about children's depression or children's anxiety or social health problems, mental problems. Are you discussing those kind of issues in Norway?
Yeah, with regards to the youngest children, they're talking most about that the children who are vulnerable, the children who live in apartments with the children who are not safe in their families. They, of course, have a very hard time because you don't get to meet other people and you're stuck in the apartment with a family where you, might have problems. And also children with a physical handicap, physical limitations, social limitations who might be in need of have special needs with training people and stuff. You don't have those opportunities now during the pandemic. So it is the vulnerable children who are having the hardest time, I guess. So, and with the social depression and stuff, that's more talked about with youngsters, a little bit older, teenagers and stuff.
Do you have a lot of cases of domestic violence in Brazil? Because the pandemic, as you said, because families had to stay together at home for the whole time, we had a huge increase on domestic violence. So, do you get this issue in Norway too?
Yes, we do, unfortunately, and it's been on the news. So it is a big problem, and I guess we don't really know how big problem it is either, because who is seeing these children? So I know a lot of teachers, but that's in school, have been contacting the children, but of course that's harder with the youngest children.
We need always keep in our mind that school for children are many things, and one of them is a space of protection from violence. I was talking another day with a researcher from Germany, and he was telling me that in Germany they choose keep schools open to face the domestic violence because of the rate. So we think just poor countries and face this kind of problems, but it's general. It's in all the world. And I think it will be some challenge for us to think about what kind of childhood this pandemic are producing. What kind of childhood are being possible without the protection against violence school usually offers, without the space for the construction of peer groups, children's peer groups, and what kind of childhood without some learnings. Other day my son was asking me, because he always listened people talking, oh, it's good for children to go to school because there they will learn to share things, to share toys, and now they don't can share nothing. They don't can stay together. They don't can construct a children's peer group. What kind of childhood would we have now? I think this is a important question for researchers to do nowadays.
Yeah, it really is. And I know there is some research going on, but I don't know enough about it. So, but it is, and also you are not able to stay outside as much as you're used to maybe, and meet other people and stuff. And so, and because of the domestic violence and those problems, that's one of the main concerns for why we try to keep the kindergartens and the school open as long as we can. But then you kind of reach a point that you have to close it for a while because of the virus. So it's not easy.
Yeah, so my last question around this subject, Marianne. So in Brazil, so actually in Distrito Federal where I live, we had at some point the playgrounds and parks, they were closed by the government, and people weren't even able to be in public open areas. So at some point it was really, really hard to the families to just say lock down at their flats. And did you have this kind of measures? So did you had to close the parks?
I'm not sure about the parks, but some soccer fields and sports fields were also for children were closed a year ago for a couple of weeks, and that was a big issue. But I'm not sure about the playgrounds. But when the kindergartens closed, I guess those playgrounds closed. So there were limited space. So we saw a lot of people out in the woods and going kind of hiking and going for walks, and yeah. So, but we're lucky to have quite, at least where I live, quite big outdoor spaces with nature, and that was open. So
yeah, so people could enjoy nature at least.
Yeah, get some fresh air and yeah.
Do you know, in Chile, Susanna, who is a geographer of childhood, was talking to me when they have a lockdown there was no one specific policy for children. So it was, as children is a private question, and just adults have some specific allowances for go out, and you just could go out home from do the market and go to pharmacy to have some medicines, and 1 hour a day to exercise or take dogs to walk. But there was no one measure for children to go out. So it's very hard because children are not still being considered in public policies as part of society, and they are really suffering too much during this pandemic. So we really need to look to them with special eyes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. Thank you, Rhaisa, and all of you watching us. It's time to finish our talk today, but before to go, if you enjoyed the discussion, please like and share this video with your team and colleagues. See you in the next video, and remember always, keep at home, be safe, and when you can, take the COVID vaccine. Bye-bye, and thank you again, Marianne.
You're welcome.